Picture this. You're in a bed at St. Michael's Medical Center. Weak, monitors beeping. Nurse Angela Harris steps in to check on you. Kind, experienced, dedicated. Before she can finish, Dr. Richard Holland storms in. He humiliates her right in front of you, calls her incompetent, questions if she belongs in medicine, sneers at her skills, then slips in ugly racial undertones, all with a smirk like he owns a place. Angela freezes, pain in her eyes, but keeps her composure, excuses herself quietly, and leaves. What Dr. Holland didn't know was that a quiet patient in that bed was Victor Reynolds, the man who could end his career with one phone call. This is a story of prejudice, arrogance, and the twist that no one, especially him, saw coming. Welcome back, everyone, or welcome if you're new here. This is a channel where we uncover real-life stories of karma, justice, hidden truths, and those jaw-dropping moments when the tables turn in the most satisfying way. Today's story is called Doctor Humiliates Black Nurse in Front of Patient. He didn't know who the patient really was. If you love stories that expose arrogance, celebrate quiet strength, and deliver that perfect twist, you're in the right place. Hit that like button right now if you believe no one should ever be disrespected for doing their job. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. We drop new stories like this every week, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. All right, enough talking. Let's dive in. St. Michael's Medical Center stands tall in the heart of a bustling city, a sprawling urban hospital where the days never truly end. Ambulances pull in and out around the clock, fluorescent lights hum overhead, and the air carries that unmistakable mix of antiseptic, coffee from a nurse's station, and quiet urgency. It's a place of miracles and exhaustion, where lives hang in the balance and the staff push through long shifts under constant pressure. Lately, things have felt even tighter. Budget cuts have trimmed the roster, beds are always full, and the overworked teams are running on fumes. In this environment, some doctors carry themselves like royalty, untouchable, above the fray, while others quietly hold everything together. Meet Dr. Richard Holland, mid-40s, sharp-featured, impeccably dressed in his white coat even on the busiest days. He's a brilliant surgeon, everyone says so. His hands are steady in the OR, his decisions quick and decisive. But that brilliance comes wrapped in arrogance. Dr. Holland has a reputation. He snaps at anyone he considers beneath him. Nurses feel it most, especially the newer ones, or those from minority backgrounds. A curt word here, a public correction there, and the message is clear. In his world, hierarchy is everything. Then there's Nurse Angela Harris. Late 30s, a highly skilled black registered nurse with 12 solid years under her belt. She recently transferred to the surgical ward, bringing her calm precision and deep compassion with her. Angela is the one who remembers a patient's favorite blanket, who explains procedures in simple terms so families aren't afraid, who stays late without complaint to make sure everyone is settled for the night. But even someone as dedicated as Angela isn't immune to the hospital's undercurrents. Since arriving, she's noticed a subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, bias. Promotions pass her by with vague excuses. Snide remarks about her attitude when she speaks up, whispers that she has to work twice as hard to be seen as half as good. She keeps her head high, focuses on her patients, and never lets the noise pull her off course. This is a world they both inhabit, a high-stakes pressure cooker where egos clash, tensions simmer, and one ordinary afternoon is about to change everything. As the weeks turned into months at St. Michael's Medical Center, what had begun as isolated sharp edges between Dr. Richard Holland and Nurse Angela Harris slowly sharpened into something far more jagged and persistent. The tension didn't explode overnight. It crept in like fog rolling through the corridors, thickening day by day until it was impossible to ignore. It started small, almost dismissible. During morning rounds one Tuesday, Angela was updating the team on a post-op patient's fluid balance. Her numbers accurate, her reasoning sound from years of experience. Harlan cut her off mid-sentence with a loud sigh. Nurse, we're not here for storytelling. Stick to the facts. The room went quiet. Residents shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. Angela finished her report in a steady voice, but the sting lingered. The interruptions became routine. A week later, in a different patient's room, she suggested adjusting an antibiotic dose based on rising creatinine levels, a standard callback by lab results. Harlan waved her off publicly again. I'll decide the orders. Thank you. Some of us actually went to medical school. He said it with a half-smile, as if it were a joke, but the edge was unmistakable. Colleagues exchanged glances in the hallway afterward. A few younger nurses whispered sympathy to Angela in the supply closet, but the veterans just shook their heads. That's just how he is, one said. Don't let it get to you. Then the muttering started, low enough to deny if confronted, loud enough to wound. As Angela passed him in the corridor carrying a tray of dressings, Harlan muttered to a resident, Some people just shouldn't be in these scrubs. They forget their role. The words drifted back to her like smoke. Another time, during a hectic shift change, he leaned into the nurse's station and said to no one in particular, We need staff who understand hierarchy, not ones who think they're equals. Eyes flicked toward Angela. She pretended not to hear, but her hands tightened on the chart she was holding. The bias wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was in the small slights, being assigned the heaviest patient load while others got lighter ones, having her suggestions ignored in team huddles until a white colleague repeated them and got credit, or the way Harlan would thank every other nurse by name but call her simply nurse, as if her identity didn't warrant more. Angela felt it all, a constant low hum of diminishment. At home, she'd stare at her reflection after long shifts, wondering how much longer she could keep swallowing the hurt without it changing her. But she never let it show at work. She arrived early, left late if needed, double-checked everything, comforted scared patients with the same gentle voice. Her patients adored her. Elderly women clutched her hand during painful procedures. Kids asked for the nice nurse by name. That kept her going. She told herself the work mattered more than the ego of one man. Yet the hospital itself seemed to enable it. Budget cuts had left everyone frayed. Short-staff shifts meant no buffer for conflict. Overworked residents too tired to challenge attendings. Charged nurses too busy to mediate. Whispers in the break room grew. Stories of other nurses who'd pushed back against Harlan only to face retaliation. Extra weekend shifts, unfavorable evaluations. His protected, someone said, results speak louder than respect. Angela listened, nodded, and kept her head down. She wasn't one to make waves. She believed professionalism would win out eventually. But deep down, doubt crept in. Was this place ever going to change, or was she just another voice expected to stay silent? Amid the simmering atmosphere, a new patient arrived one overcast Thursday afternoon, Mr. Victor Reynolds. Admitted for a routine cardiac workup, stress test, echo, monitoring for irregular rhythms. Nothing urgent, nothing flashy. He was in his late 70s, silver-haired, with a quiet polish of someone who'd lived a long, measured life. Dressed in the standard hospital gown over his own pressed pajamas, he looked every bit the unassuming retiree. Polite smile, soft-spoken, no demands for special treatment. Staff slotted him into the census as low maintenance. Discharge in a couple of days, probably. No one gave him a second thought beyond the usual vitals checks. But Victor Reynolds noticed everything. He sat up in bed with perfect posture, eyes sharp and unhurried, taking in the rhythm of the ward like a man studying a chessboard. When nurses entered, he greeted them by name. Good morning, Nurse Angela, after reading it once on her badge. He asked questions that went beyond the basics. How long has the team been using this particular beta-blocker protocol? What's the readmission rate for similar patients? Angela answered thoughtfully. He listened intently, nodding as if committing every detail to memory. Thank you for explaining it so clearly, he'd say, genuine appreciation in his voice, something rare enough to stand out. Other interactions were equally understated but telling. He'd occasionally excuse himself for a brief walk in the hall, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in low, measured tones. No raised voice, no urgency, just calm authority. Once, a resident overheard fragments. Update on the quarterly review. Yes, proceed as discussed. But in the chaos of shift change, no one lingered on it. Patients made calls. It was normal. He was kind to the entire staff. Thanked the CNAs for fresh linens. Complimented the dietary aide on the meal tray presentation. Even shared a quiet joke with a phlebotomist to ease her nerves during a tricky draw. With Angela, he was especially attentive, noticing when she seemed tired after a double shift, asking gentle questions about her day without prying. You handle a lot here, he said once. It's not easy. She smiled politely, brushed it off. Patients often projected gratitude, but something in his steady gaze made her pause. He watched the dynamics too. How Harlan swept past without acknowledgement, how other doctors deferred to him, how Angela moved through the room with quiet efficiency despite it all. No one connected any of it. Not the charge nurse complaining about short staffing, not the residents gossiping in the lounge, not even Angela, who treated him with the same compassion she gave everyone. To them, Victor Reynolds was just another patient, background noise in a war that never slowed down. They were wrong. The tension that had been building for weeks was reaching its breaking point. One heated afternoon, everything would collide in a single room. Words spoken in anger, humiliation laid bare, and a quiet observer who had been watching longer than anyone realized. The storm wasn't coming. It was already here. The storm brewing for weeks, muttered insults, public dismissals, daily microaggressions, finally erupted on a chaotic afternoon at St. Michael's Medical Center. The surgical ward was in pandemonium, coal lights flashing relentlessly, phones ringing, a fresh trauma pulling staff away, intercom crackling with stat pages. The air was thick with exhaustion, sweat, stale coffee, sharp antiseptic. Nurses hurried past with drawn faces, scrubs rumpled from endless shifts. In room 412, Mr. Victor Reynolds lay quietly under cardiac monitoring. Mid-morning, he'd reported a steady chest ache, not critical, but enough to order in full adjustment and pain med review. Routine task. Nurse Angela Harris entered at 3:17 p.m., calm as ever. Navy scrubs, badge clipped, stethoscope around her neck. Fluorescent lights cast pale shadows on her tired eyes, yet she smiled warmly. "Good afternoon, Mr. Reynolds. Pain still at 4 out of 10. He nodded, eyes watchful. A bit higher after walking to the window. She began her assessment. BP cuff inflating with a soft whine, stethoscope cool against his chest, fingers on his wrist. Monitor beeped steadily, 118/76, heart rate 68, SATS 97%. She tapped notes into the bedside computer, movement precise and reassuring. For a moment the room felt almost serene amid the ward's frenzy, just a drip of saline and rhythmic beeps. She was finishing the chart entry when the door slammed open. Dr. Richard Harlan stormed in, surgical cap on, mask dangling, face flushed and sweaty from an overlong OR case. Irritation radiated off him. A bleeder had delayed closure. Pages had interrupted him twice. He was primed for conflict. He ignored the patient. His eyes locked on Angela at the computer. "What are you doing here?" The question snapped like a whip, loud, accusatory. Angela paused, finished typing the BP, then turned slowly, voice even. Updating his chart. "Doctor, BP is stable at 118/76, pain level." Harlan cut her off with a harsh scoff. "Stable?" He sneered the word, mocking, from someone who barely passed nursing school. The insult struck hard. Angela's hand dropped. Heat flooded her face. Tears pricked her eyes. She blinked them back fiercely. She had faced bias before, but never this raw, this public. He stepped closer, voice lowering to venomous drawl. Go fetch coffee or something useful. We don't need your kind slowing us down." Your kind lingered, deliberate, loaded with racial disdain. The bar poisoned the air. It wasn't about skills. It was about her presence, her right to exist there. The monitor's beep suddenly seemed deafening. Angela froze, shoulders rigid, hands at her sides, fingers curling. Humiliation burned in her chest like fire. She wanted to fire back, list her 12 years, her flawless record. But she knew better. Defense would become attitude. So she stayed silent, composed, unbreakable on the surface. Harlan, sensing victory, turned to the patient with false deference. "Sorry about this, sir. Some of these nurses think they are doctors now. I'll handle it myself." He shoved past Angela, elbow grazing her arm, and fiddled with the full pump. The adjustment was redundant. She'd said it correctly. He stabbed buttons hard, muttering about standards and competence. Pure power play. Angela stood another heartbeat. Then she reached forward, closed the chart gently, placed it on the table. Small act of dignity. Her voice, when it came, was quiet and steady. Excuse me. No tremor. No plea. She turned, walked to the door, steps measured, head high, shoulders squared. She didn't look back. The door clicked shut softly behind her. Silence flooded the room. Only the monitors continued. Beep, beep, beep. Cold witnesses. Harlan straightened, smug half-smile curling his lips, already dismissing the moment. Victor Reynolds hadn't moved. Hands folded on the blanket, posture calm. But his sharp eyes followed the closed door, then shifted to Harlan, then back to the door. He said nothing. Yet in that silence, everything changed. The overlooked man in the bed had seen it all, every sneer, every cut, every ounce of strength Angela summoned to walk away unbroken. And he would remember. The door to room 412 closed with that soft, final click, and the hallway outside swallowed Angela Harris whole. She walked, not ran, down the corridor, steps deliberate, head still high even as the fluorescent lights blurred above her. The ward's chaos continued around her, a cart rattling past, a call bell chiming insistently, voices overlapping in urgent bursts. But for Angela, the world had narrowed to the burn behind her eyes and the ache in her chest. She made it to the small alcove near the linen cart, out of sight from most rooms, and stopped, leaned one hand against the cool wall, closed her eyes. The tears came then, hot and silent. Not loud sobs. She wouldn't give them that. Just quiet streams she wiped away quickly with the sleeve of her scrubs. She breathed in shudders, out in measured counts. Questions flooded in, the ones she usually pushed down. Do I really belong here? After 12 years, after every late night and every patient saved, am I still just your kind to people like him? Is this the price of staying professional? Swallowing it, always swallowing it? She straightened after a minute, wiped her face again, forced her expression back to neutral. She had patients waiting. Rounds weren't done. She couldn't fall apart. Not yet. Not ever. In front of them. Back at the nurse's station, two colleagues, Maria, a veteran LPN, and young Jamal from night, noticed her return. They saw the slight redness around her eyes, the way her shoulders stayed too rigid. Maria stepped close, voice low. Angela, you okay? Angela managed a small nod. I'm fine. Just needed a second. Jamal glanced toward room 412's direction, then back at her. We heard some of it. Through the door. That was brutal. Maria shook her head slowly. It's been worse lately. But you know how it is. Harlan's untouchable. Brings in the big cases. Keeps the numbers up. You push back, you get labeled difficult. Always, they start looking for reasons to write you up. Angela looked down at the counter, fingers tracing the edge of a chart. I know. Maria touched her arm gently. You're one of the best we've got. Don't let him make you doubt that. But be careful. Keep your head down for now. Sympathy hung in the air, real, warm, but so did the warning. The system protected its own. Angela gave them a faint, grateful smile. Thanks. I'll be okay. She picked up the next chart and moved on, because that's what she did. She kept moving. Back inside room 412, the silence lingered long after Angela's exit. Dr. Harlan had already left. Striding out moments later, muttering about needing to check on another patient, smug satisfaction still clinging to him like cologne. The door clicked shut again. Victor Reynolds remained exactly as he had been, propped against pillows, hands folded on the blanket, monitors beeping their steady rhythm. On the surface, nothing had changed, but beneath that calm exterior, his expression had shifted. The polite, unassuming retiree mask was still in place, gentle eyes, soft mouth, but something harder flickered behind them now. A quiet steel. He had stayed silent during the tirade, not out of fear or indifference, but because he was listening, absorbing, cataloging every word, every sneer, every micro-expression on Angela's face as she held herself together. He had heard it all. The casual cruelty. The racial edge slipped in like it was nothing. The way Harlan turned to him as an ally, assuming shared superiority. The dignity Angela summoned to walk out unbroken. Victor Reynolds exhaled slowly. Then, when the hallway outside quieted for a moment, he reached for the call button. Not urgently, just a single, calm press. A minute later, Maria, the same LPN who had comforted Angela, entered. "Mr. Reynolds, you rang." He offered his usual polite smile. Voice low, measured. "Yes, I was wondering about Nurse Angela, the one who was just in here." Maria paused, surprised by the specificity. "Angela Harris? What about her?" "She seems very thorough, very kind. How long has she been on this floor?" Maria relaxed slightly, glad for a positive question. "Angela? About 6 months here on surgical, but she's got 12 years total. One of the best we have. Patients request her by name. She stays late, never complains, catches things others miss. Honestly, she's the kind of nurse you want when things get bad." Victor nodded slowly, as if filing each word away. "Thank you. That's good to know." Maria smiled. "She's tough, tougher than most people realize." "Yes," Victor said quietly, almost to himself. "I can see that." Maria left the room, closing the door gently behind her. Victor Reynolds settled back against the pillows. His face returned to its calm, retiree mask. But his eyes, those sharp, unhurried eyes, stared at the ceiling for a long moment. He had heard enough, seen enough, and now he knew exactly who Angela Harris was, what she endured, and what she deserved. The quiet man in the bed was no longer just observing. He was deciding. Back in room 412, the afternoon faded into evening. The ward quieted slightly, shift change approaching, lights dimming in the hallways, the frenzy of the day giving way to the steady hum of night. Victor Reynolds lay in his bed, monitors still beeping their unhurried rhythm. On the surface, he looked the same, elderly gentleman, polite, unassuming. But inside, the decision had crystallized. He reached for the call button once more. A single, calm press. When the unit secretary answered over the intercom, his voice came through soft but firm. "I'd like to speak with a hospital administrator. Privately, as soon as possible." A brief pause on the other end. Then, "Of course, Mr. Reynolds. I'll page Dr. Patel right away." Less than 15 minutes later, the door opened quietly. Dr. Sanjay Patel, the hospital's chief administrator, mid-50s, suit instead of scrubs, clipboard in hand, stepped inside. He closed the door behind him, expression polite but puzzled. Patients rarely requested private meetings with the top brass, especially on a routine admission. "Mr. Reynolds, you wanted to see me." Victor Reynolds sat up a little straighter against the pillows. His eyes met Patel's, steady, unflinching. "Yes, close the door. Please, this won't take long." Patel complied, then pulled up the visitor chair. Victor didn't waste time on pleasantries. "I've been here for several days now, observing, listening." Patel tilted his head slightly. "Observing." Victor nodded once. "And what I've seen concerns me deeply." He paused, long enough for the words to settle. Then, voice low but clear, "I am not here as just any patient." Another pause. "I am Victor Reynolds." Patel blinked, the name registering slowly. Then his eyes widened. "The Victor Reynolds." Victor gave the smallest nod. Chairman and majority owner of Apex Healthcare Group, the conglomerate that owns St. Michael's Medical Center and 5 other hospitals in the region. The administrator's face drained of color. He sat back in the chair, clipboard forgotten on his lap. Victor continued, tone even, unemotional. "I've been admitted under an alias. No fanfare, no special treatment. Just a regular patient name on the chart. The reason is simple. 4 months, we received anonymous complaints about staff treatment, culture, morale, bias. I decided to see it for myself, not through reports, not through HR summaries, in person, undercover, watching everything." He let that hang. Patel swallowed hard. "Mr. Reynolds, I had no idea." Victor raised a hand, gentle, but final. "You weren't supposed to. That's the point." He leaned forward slightly. "Today, in this very room, I witnessed something unacceptable. A senior surgeon, Dr. Richard Harlan, humiliated one of your nurses, in front of me, He questioned her competence, mocked her education, used language laced with racial disdain, told her to fetch coffee and implied she didn't belong, all while assuming I was powerless. Just another retiree. He had no idea who was listening. Patel's mouth opened, then closed. Victor's voice dropped lower, almost conversational. Her name is Angela Harris. I've spoken to staff. She's one of the best on this floor. Dedicated, precise, compassionate, and she endured that treatment without breaking, in silence, because she believed she had to. He paused again, longer this time, letting the weight build. That ends now. Patel nodded quickly, voice unsteady. Of course. We'll investigate immediately. Victor shook his head once. No, not investigate. Act. I've seen enough. I know what I saw, and I know what needs to happen next. He looked directly at the administrator. Call an emergency board meeting. First thing tomorrow morning. Dr. Harlan will be there. So will I. No longer as Victor Reynolds the patient, as Victor Reynolds the owner. Patel stood, leg shaky. Yes, sir. Right away. Victor settled back against the pillows, calm once more. One more thing. Patel paused at the door. Make sure Nurse Harris is informed she has nothing to fear. She did nothing wrong. Quite the opposite. Patel nodded fervently and slipped out. The door closed. Room 412 fell quiet again. Only the monitors beeped on. Victor Reynolds closed his eyes for a moment. A small, satisfied exhale. The quiet observer had stepped out of the shadows. The tables had turned. And tomorrow, everything would change. The next morning arrived crisp and clear at St. Michael's Medical Center. The emergency board meeting was called before most of the day shift had even clocked in. Conference room on the executive floor, long mahogany table, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, leather chairs still smelling faintly of polish. The board members filed in quietly, puzzled by the urgency but sensing something serious. Dr. Sanjay Patel presided at the head, face pale, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Dr. Richard Harlan arrived last, white coat impeccable, stride confident, a faint smirk already playing at the corners of his mouth. He assumed this was about some minor policy update or budget issue. He took his seat, leaned back, crossed his arms. Untouchable. As always, the door opened one more time. Victor Reynolds entered. No hospital gown. No full pole. No retiree pretense. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, silver hair neatly combed, posture straight and commanding. He moved with the quiet authority of someone who owned the room, because he did. Harlan's smirk faltered for the first time. He sat up straighter, brow furrowing. Victor took the seat at the opposite end of the table, directly facing Harlan. The room fell silent. Victor spoke first. Voice calm, measured, but carrying the weight of finality. Thank you all for coming on short notice. He paused, letting the silence stretch. For those who don't know me personally, I am Victor Reynolds, chairman and majority owner of Apex Healthcare Group. A ripple of shock passed through the board. Whispers, wide eyes. Harlan's face drained of color. Victor continued, gaze locked on the surgeon. I have been a patient here for the past several days, admitted under an alias, undercover, to observe firsthand the culture we've received complaints about. Harlan shifted in his seat. The smirk was gone. Victor leaned forward slightly. And yesterday afternoon, in room 412, I witnessed behavior that is unacceptable in any hospital, let alone one under my ownership. He began recounting the incident, word for word, slow and deliberate, every detail razor-sharp. The nurse entered to adjust my full and review pain medication. You stormed in, irritated from surgery. You interrupted her mid-sentence, called her incompetent, questioned whether she belonged in medicine, told her, in front of me, to go fetch coffee or something useful, emphasized "you're kind" with clear disdain, then turned to me and said, "Sorry about this, sir. Some of these nurses think they are doctors now. I'll handle it myself." Victor paused after each quoted line, dramatic silence filling the room like smoke. Harlan opened his mouth, closed it. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Victor's voice hardened. "You humiliated a dedicated professional in front of me. You assumed I was powerless to act. You were wrong. The words landed like a gavel. Harlan stammered, voice cracking. Mr. Reynolds, that was taken out of context. I was under stress from the OR. It was a moment of frustration. I didn't mean. Victor raised a hand, cutting him off cleanly. Excuses are not required. I heard what I heard. I saw what I saw. He turned to the board. Dr. Richard Harlan's employment at St. Michael's Medical Center is terminated, effective immediately. Gasps around the table. Harlan's face went ashen. He gripped the arms of his chair. Victor continued without pause. I will also be recommending a full review of his medical license to the state board. His pattern of behavior, documented in prior complaints, ends today. Harlan tried one last time, voice rising in panic. This is career-ending. You can't. Victor's eyes never left him. I can, and I have. Security was already waiting outside the door. 2 officers stepped in quietly. Harlan stood, legs unsteady, and was escorted out. The door closed behind him. The room exhaled. Victor turned to Dr. Patel. Please ask Nurse Angela Harris to join us. Minutes later, Angela entered, still in scrubs, badge clipped, expression guarded and confused. She'd been pulled from rounds with no explanation. When she saw Victor Reynolds at the head of the table, suit, not gown, her eyes widened. Victor stood, gestured to the empty chair beside him. Please, Nurse Harris. Sit. She did, slowly, uncertain. Victor's tone softened, warm, genuine. Angela, I owe you an apology. Not for what happened to you. That was never your fault. But for the system that allowed it. I witnessed what Dr. Harlan did to you yesterday. Every word. Every insult. You handled it with more grace and professionalism than most people could have mustered. You are one of the finest nurses on this floor, perhaps in the entire system. Patients request you. Colleagues rely on you. You deserve respect, not humiliation. Angela's eyes glistened. She swallowed hard. Victor continued. Dr. Harlan is no longer employed here. His actions have consequences. He paused, letting that sink in. Now, I have a question for you. If you choose, I'd like to offer you a leadership role, charge nurse coordinator for the surgical ward, or even director level if you're interested in broader impact. Training programs, bias prevention initiatives, positions where your voice can shape the culture here. Only if you want it. No pressure. Angela stared at him, shock giving way to quiet disbelief, then something like hope. She nodded slowly. I'd like to think about it. But thank you. Truly. Victor smiled, small, sincere. You've earned it. And more. He looked around the table at the board. This hospital will change. Starting today. Angela stood. As she reached the door, she paused, turned back. Mr. Reynolds, thank you for seeing me. Victor inclined his head. No, thank you for being who you are. She left the room, head a little higher, steps a little lighter. The board remained seated. Victor Reynolds, no longer the quiet patient, sat at the head of the table. Justice had arrived. Quietly, decisively, and the story wasn't over yet. The boardroom doors closed behind Angela as she stepped out, the weight of the morning still settling over her like a new skin, lighter, somehow, despite everything. Down the hall, Dr. Richard Harlan's exit was far less graceful. Security flanked him as he walked. Head down now, white coat slung over one arm like a discarded flag. No more smirking stride. No more barked orders. Just the echo of his footsteps fading toward the elevators. Whispers followed him through the corridors he once ruled. Nurses exchanging glances, residents falling silent as he passed, the word spreading like wildfire. By noon, his nameplate was gone from the surgical suite door. His office lights were off. His access codes deactivated. He left in disgrace, career in ruins, reputation shattered, the untouchable surgeon reduced to a cautionary story told in hushed tones at shift change. In the days and weeks that followed, St. Michael's began to change. Victor Reynolds didn't disappear after that morning. He stayed visible, meeting with staff, walking the floors, listening without pretense. Apex Healthcare issued a system-wide directive, Mandatory bias and cultural competency training for every employee, from housekeeping to attendings. No exceptions. Sessions rolled out within the month. Interactive, uncomfortable, honest. Facilitators didn't sugarcoat it. Real cases were discussed. Real harm acknowledged. The hospital didn't transform overnight. Old habits lingered in corners. But the message was clear. The culture of his untouchable was over. Accountability had a new face, and it wore a quiet suit instead of a white coat. Angela Harris returned to the ward the next shift as she always did. Scrubs pressed, badge clipped, smile ready for her patients. But something was different. The whispers of sympathy had turned to quiet respect. Colleagues nodded a little longer when she passed. New nurses watched her more closely, learning from her calm precision, her steady hands, her refusal to let bitterness take root. Within a few weeks, she accepted the leadership role Victor had offered, not the director position yet, but charge nurse coordinator for the surgical ward, with input on training and team development. She began mentoring the newer nurses, showing them how to advocate without apology, how to document thoroughly, how to hold boundaries while keeping compassion intact. She spoke openly about what happened, not for pity, but for truth. You don't have to shrink to fit someone else's idea of your place, she told them. You belong here. Full stop. Her voice carried weight now, not because of anger, but because of survival. She was stronger than ever, not hardened, but fortified. The woman who once questioned if she belonged now helped others know they did. Victor Reynolds was discharged a few days later, quietly, under his alias No More. As he left, he paused at the nurse's station, caught Angela's eye across the hall, and gave her a small, respectful nod. No grand speech, just acknowledgement. She nodded back. The story closed not with fireworks, but with something steadier, change rooted in quiet observation, in one person deciding enough was enough, in justice arriving not from the loudest voices, but from the quietest corners. Never judge by appearances. Prejudice can blind even the smartest people, those with degrees, titles, power. It can make them miss the humanities standing right in front of them. And justice often comes from places no one expects. From the patient in the bed who watches everything. From the nurse who walks out unbroken. From the decision made in silence that changes everything when spoken aloud. Thank you for staying with this story. If you've ever faced something like this, maybe a moment where someone tried to make you feel small, or you've witnessed it happen to someone else, drop a comment below. Share your story, your thoughts, or just let us know you're here. Your voice matters, and you're not alone in this. Like this video right now if you believe respect should never depend on skin color, title, or background. If dignity is non-negotiable, smash that thumbs up. And if these stories of karma, redemption, quiet strength, and hidden truths hit home for you, subscribe and turn on notifications. We drop new ones every week, each one reminding us that justice is a way of showing up when we least expect it. Thanks so much for watching all the way through. It means a lot. And always remember, you never know who's really watching. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong. See you soon.